Greetings everyone. Welcome to this series of international relations where we are discussing international organizations, bodies or groups. And this series of international relations are highly important from the perspective of upcoming prelims 2026. Let's begin. So, in today's session, we will discuss three important international groups. First is I2U2, second is G20 and third is G7. Right? So, let's begin. First is I2U2. Right? So, it this is a group of four countries, right? Four countries means India, two I's. Two I's means India, Israel. Two U's means UAE and USA. And it is also known as Middle Eastern Quad or Western Quad, right? First fact that it includes four countries. Two I means India, Israel. Two U's UAE, USA. And it is also known as Middle Eastern Quad or Western Quad. When was it established? It was established in or launched in 2022, right? And its means in 2022 the first leaders summit was held. Clear? Next important point, format. It is an informal strategic economic grouping. So mainly it is an economic grouping, and it is not formal but informal. And generally what happens then when there is a group which is informal, generally it does not have any secretariat, right? And that's why I2U2 also has no secretariat, right? Next, membership. We have already discussed four countries: India, Israel, UAE, and US, also known as Western Quad or Middle Eastern Quad. Clear? Now, what are the aims or objectives? So, first is to promote joint investments and cooperation in water, energy, transportation, space, health, and food security. So, mainly its focus areas are this, right? And what is the core objective? Core objective is economic or strategic economic partnership, right? It strengthens economic and technological partnership in the Middle East and beyond. Clear? Next, support regional integration and sustainable development, right? You must be knowing the meaning of sustainable development, right? You have learned in EVS, so no need to discuss here. Next, key functions of I2U2. First, identify and fund joint projects like clean energy, food security corridors. These are the key areas, right? Next, high level working groups and ministerial meetings. Okay, linkage with broader initiatives like IMEC. What is IMEC? Its full form is India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor, right? And as we have discussed that its main focus is what? Strategic economic grouping, right? That's why initiatives like IMEC, India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor, right? Next, recent developments. These are very important. Generally, UPSC asks about recent developments, right? So it focuses on accelerating IMEC. We have seen the full form of IMEC and I2U2 projects during PM Modi's Israel visit in February 2026, right? You must be knowing that in February 2026, PM Modi visited Israel. I have made a separate video. You can watch that video. The link is given in the description box, right? Emphasis on renewable energy, desalination, and food security projects, right? And all these are related to economic activities, right? Next, coordination on geopolitical issues in West Asia. That's why it is also known as West Asian or Western Quad, right? Next, G7. Again, very important, right? So G7 full form G for group and 7 means 7 member countries. Okay? So initially it had only 6 countries, 6 members, and that time it was called as G6, right? So in established in 1975, and that time it had only 6 members, and that's why it was called as G6, right? But what happened that later on Canada joined in 1976, means first in 1975 G6 came into existence, and in the next year in 1976 Canada joined it and it became G7, group of 7, right? Now, what is it? It is an intergovernmental political and economic forum. So, unlike I2U2, it is political and economic forum, both. I2U2 is, or main focus of I2U2 is economic area, but it is also, it includes both political as well as economic aspects. Next, it is organized around shared values of pluralism, liberal democracy, and representative government. Clear? Next, headquarters. Again, as I said, that if there is informal group, there is high chance that it does not have any secretariat or headquarters, right? So, like I2U2, it also, or there is no permanent secretariat of G7, and there is rotating presidency. Rotating presidency means, for example, there are 7 countries, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 countries, right? 7 countries are, we will see the names of members, right? So, the presidency is based on rotation basis, right? Now, the 7 member countries, this is very important. Name is very important, right? See, the name of these groups, organizations, right, or bodies are very important, right? So always remember the name of members, right? So in G7, there are 7 most advanced economies, right? So most advanced economies are Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, UK, United Kingdom, and US. So in total, there are 7, and to remember it in easier way, I am telling you something, that remember, from Northern America, Canada and US, right? 4 European countries, France, Germany, Italy, UK, right? Only one Asian country, that is Japan, right? And you must remember that only one Asian country is in the group of G7, that is Japan, not China, neither India, right? So UPSC may frame or tricky statements like more than, or 2 or more than 2 countries of Asia are the member of G7 group, right? Always remember, only Japan is the member of G7, only Asian country, right? 4 European countries, 2 North American countries, and 1 Asian countries, right? You can easily recall, right? These are the 7 members: US, UK, Canada, Japan, and these are 3: France, Italy, Germany. Clear? Next, aims and objectives. So, discuss and coordinate policies on global economic, political, and security issues. Next, it addresses climate change, health, trade, security, and development challenges. Clear? Next, promotes democratic values and rule-based international order. So, mainly it focuses on liberal ideas, both economic as well as political aspects. Okay. Next, you can see the importance of these 7 members of G7, right? So, G7 countries, global economic and demographic share. So, though the number is less, but their weightage, their importance is very high. As we have seen that all are most advanced economies. So, at global level, it represents 10% of world population, right? And nominal net wealth, 50% of global wealth. You can imagine that these 7 countries, right, have 50% of global wealth, right? And only represents 10% of population, but they have 50% of global wealth, right? Nominal GDP, 44% of nominal GDP of world. GDP on the basis of PPP, right? Right? Purchasing power parity. So 30% of GDP based on PPP. Okay? So you can see the importance of G7 grouping, and such facts are very important. Again, I am repeating: 10 represents 10% of population. They have 50% of global wealth, nominal net wealth, 44% of nominal GDP, and 30% of GDP based on PPP. Right? Now, key functions and recent developments. So, annual leaders summit it is most visible. Again, ministerial meeting. Ministerial meetings means their ministers, finance ministers, foreign ministers, environment ministers have meetings. Such meetings are conducted mostly on annual basis, right? Provides aids, sets global standards, and coordinate sanctions when needed. Okay. Next, recent development. This point is very important. In 2025, G7 summit was hosted by Canada, but this year 2026, and from prelims perspective this fact is very important, that in 2026 G7 summit to be hosted by Italy. Again I am repeating that the summit of G7 2026, it will be hosted by Italy, right? Last year it was hosted by Canada. Next, continued focus on Ukraine support, China containment strategy, energy security, and AI governance. So this was all about G7. Now we will discuss about G20. So like G7, the full form of G20 is group of 20s, right? But here you have to be careful, and one notable point I am telling you in the beginning, that unlike G7 means G7 have 7 members, 7 countries, but in G20 it includes 19 countries plus European Union and now African Union also, right? So it is a group of 19 countries, right? 19 sovereign countries, European Union and African Union, right? So if a statement comes that G20 includes 20 sovereign countries, right, cross that option, right? It includes 19 sovereign countries plus European Union plus African Union. First notable point. Second, it works to address major issues related to global economy such as international financial stability, climate change mitigation, and sustainable development through annual meetings of head of state or and head of government. Clear? These are the notable points. Next, note. But what happened that in 2009 summit, G20 declared itself the primary venue for international economic and financial cooperation. Right? So this is notable point. In 2009 summit, it was declared as what? International economic and financial cooperation. Clear? Next, aims and objectives. So what are the aims or objectives? First, to promote economic cooperation among major emerging economies. So most of the members of G20 are emerging economies, right? Next, reform global governance institutions like UN, IMF, World Bank, etc. So many emerging economies are demanding reforms. For example, India, right, and other emerging economies are demanding permanent seat in UN, right, UN Security Council, right? They are demanding reforms in IMF, World Bank, WTO, right? So all such issues are also discussed in G20, right? Strengthen South-South cooperation and multipolarity, right? So mostly, if you see the world map now, you will find that most of the countries that lies in the southern hemisphere of the world, right, they are emerging economies, including India, right? These are the countries, and you must remember the name of these countries, right? UPSC has already asked about the name of members of G20, right? So members are Australia, Argentina, Turkey, Japan, Canada, Germany, Brazil, UK, South Africa, France, Italy, Saudi Arabia, India, right? Indonesia, China, Mexico, Russia, European Union, South Korea, USA, plus African Union. Clear? So these are the name of members. You must remember the name of members, right? And always remember that India is member of G20, but not the member of G7, right? Because G7 only includes most advanced economies, and India is emerging economy, right? Next, so global share of G20 members. So G20 members represent around 80% of global population. 80%, 78, you can say roughly is 80%. Exactly it is 78.9%. But roughly you can say 80%. Right? GDP, 85% of world GDP. 75% of international trade, and 60% of land areas. Clear? This is the important data, and you can use such data in your mains answer. Clear? Next, recent developments. So, recent development, G20 2025 summit was hosted by South Africa, and again this point is very important. G20 summit of 2026 means this year's G20 summit, it will be hosted by USA, where Miami, right? So again I am repeating, the summit of G20 2026, it will be hosted by USA, where Miami. Okay. Focus area, debt sustainability, climate finance, digital public infrastructure, and supply chain resilience. Right? So in this video lecture, we have discussed about three important international groups: I2U2, G7, and G20. We will continue this series in next lecture. Thank you.